Tim, and Tom.
All right, Tom, are you a smart guy?
That's debatable. A lot of people would say no. I like to think yes, but what's the question? Why are you asking?
Well, there's intelligence, and then there's artificial intelligence, right?
Of course, yeah. Uh-huh.
Any intelligence you have would be artificial, whereas maybe I'm misunderstanding it wrong. No, actually, with artificial intelligence is a very broad subject, and it's very unique in a lot of ways. And there's so many things you can get into, but you've heard of things like Amazon, what do they call it, Alexa, and things like that.
Yeah. Actually, that's been in the news a lot lately. So yeah, I'm pretty familiar with the artificial intelligence as it is.
Given a lot of the current news, especially with the Facebook data breach, I think it's pretty unique to find a company right here in town that's doing that sort of aspect a little bit different. And it's Mycroft, and they've got what they call an open source voice assistant. Am I hearing that right? We have CEO Josh Montgomery here. He's going to tell us a little bit about what they do maybe differently, and then we're kind of learning a little bit about them. Josh, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. It's a wonderful day to be up in Kansas City.
So I'm saying it, very layman's terms to Tom here, but what can you describe maybe a better elevator speech of what it is you guys do?
So we built an open alternative to Siri or Alexa. So we built a privacy-focused voice assistant that's being developed so that individuals and companies can deploy their own voice assistant with their own voice, their own user experience, and keep their data private.
That's really what stuck out to me the most, because I've seen all those things. I love tech. I love the hottest, newest phones and all that sort of things and the softwares. But recently, with all the data concerns that have come out, just really kind of started withdrawing. I see those Google Homes and the Amazon things. I'm like, I don't know that I want those things listening to me at all times. And as I was reading through your product from your stuff online, it sounds like that's not a worry at all.
No, the whole idea for us is to provide customers with the ability to have this type of technology without giving up their privacy.
And one thing that I wanted to ask, I was going through some of the aspects on your website, and it was the customization. Tell us a little bit about that. How can you customize your product?
For us, the idea is, to begin with, we started with hackers and makers with our first product, the Mark I, and it's got a Raspberry Pi in there, and it's really designed for people who are hardcore into artificial intelligence and Python, members of this really super uber geeky open community. And those people are building all kinds of really nifty, what we call skills for the platform. They built skills that allow it to sing. They built skills that track the International Space Station. They've built skills that use a camera to play rock, paper, scissors, which is, just a step away from American Sign Language. All these really great technologies and these really great skills for the platform. And they're now building tools that will allow an individual like my mom or my grandma to customize it. So the idea there is, change the wake word. With technologies from these big tech companies, because they want to control their brand, you have to wake it up with their wake word. You're not allowed to rename it to the name you want. With their technologies, you get one voice, the voice that they provide it. With us, you can customize that, build your own voices. And then also we have a tool called Persona, which changes the personality. And so the whole idea there is that, I might have a voice assistant whose favorite team is the Jayhawks, and you might have a voice assistant whose favorite team is Mizzou. And, when you ask it a question, what's the best basketball team in the country, then the Mizzou one will say the Jayhawks, and the Jayhawks one will also say the Jayhawks. And
this is fake news, though. You want them to say K-State is what you want them to say.
And so, you can customize the personality, and an individual could do that, or even a group of people. So you might have a KU branded voice assistant that, a team from KU engineering maintains and people on that campus use, and it has specialty skills surrounding, what's in the cafeteria at the University of Kansas. And you might have another voice assistant that works for a big corporation and, might help a law firm to answer questions like, has anybody in the firm been in front of Judge Smith, right? And it would be able to answer domain-specific questions like that, all while keeping all the data in-house. I think what we've found and what we're seeing with the so-called privacy breach at Facebook, I wouldn't argue that Facebook had a privacy breach. I'd argue that Facebook's business model is finally seeing the light of day. I mean, this is not something new, and I think that some of the leadership at Facebook were really surprised that pushback on this was so extreme. This is what Facebook does: you are the product, and they sell you to other people. And I think a lot of people are angry and upset by this. The alternative is you pay for the product, but somehow you have to pay for the services that you're consuming. And so it should be very suspicious to people who are using these other voice assistants that they're heavily subsidized. You can buy them for like $40 and you put it in your kitchen and you never have to pay for anything. If you don't pay for the product, you're the product.
With that, obviously you guys were setting all these things and had a business and an idea going well before this Facebook quote unquote data breach. So I bet there's a bit of a, aha, see, we knew, we tried to tell you kind of a moment, but was it always with that in mind, or did you at some point make like a conscious choice of, hey, the money's in the data harvesting and the selling, the advertising, or was it from the start like we're doing it differently?
We have a very different goal. So when you look at the technologies that are coming out from other big tech companies, they have goals that align with their business. In the case of our friends in Seattle, it's to sell retail products and to sell music subscriptions. In the case of folks down in Cupertino, it's to sell expensive laptops and expensive speakers. In the case of our friends in search, it's to drive search and to drive discovery for their platform. And so those platforms are really positioned to feed the businesses where they make money. In our case, we want to build a voice assistant that runs anywhere and interacts exactly like a person. I do not care where you buy your paper towels. I do not care what you use for your search engine. I have no interest in selling you a high-end computer. My goal is to provide you with the best voice experience possible, with the end goal being that for a basic interaction, something like ordering a hamburger, let's say, that you wouldn't be able to tell when you talk to the assistant whether you're talking to a human or a machine. And there's a lot of really great applications that come out of that type of technology in terms of reducing repetitive workload for call center workers, for example. We worked with a local phone company and spent some time learning about their call center operation and found that 90% of their call volume is 25 questions. And so the 27,000 people that work in their call centers spend most of their day answering the same question over and over and over. And so using this technology, we're able to eliminate that repetitive task and then allow the humans in the loop to really provide value where there's real value. And the same for, driving an Uber, the same for long haul trucking, where, there's this really boring segment from Kansas City to Sacramento that really doesn't require human interaction, and the only place the humans are in the loop are at either end, where they're bringing the trucks into the city and they sleep in their own bed every night. I mean, there's a lot of really great places where these technologies become applicable, and that's always been our goal, is to bring it there, not to feed some other ancillary business.
Well, let's take a step back. Where did this idea come from? Was this like you seeing kind of the way technology was advancing and saying, I can do, this better than others? Or were you just going like, hey, this would be a fun thing. Let's try that.
So credit where it's due. Dave Dalton, if you've never met him, you guys should go do a show with him. He's a fantastic guy. He runs a local makerspace called Hammerspace here in Kansas City. They do all kinds of crazy things, from props for Marvel movies to like lasers to robots. I mean, he's a really, really creative guy. And Hammerspace is kind of like a gym for people who make stuff, right? Yeah. And I went and visited his original facility, and he had a technology called Iris, which was this kind of hacked together old Microsoft technology, and it had like a push button thing, and you'd hit the button and it would like play Gladios from Portal over the speakers in the makerspace, and like every 15 minutes it would make an announcement, like clean up after yourself, stuff like that. And I saw that, I was like, man, we could do so much better in our makerspace in Lawrence. And so we went and looked, and we said, okay, at the time the only real voice assistant was Siri. There were some technologies coming out of like Google Assistant, but it really wasn't mature, and we'd never heard of Echo. And so we looked at it and we said, okay, well, what could we do to build something that was really natural, that's like Jarvis from Iron Man, right? Like you could have a conversation back and forth with it. And we started working down that path, and as our technology began to mature, Echo became a thing. They did their Super Bowl ad, and up until that point, I used to have to explain to people, like and if you think about it, like before you'd ever seen an Echo, like the idea that there's a speaker in the corner, it listens to you, you talk to it, and it does stuff, was really foreign to people. I was trying to explain it, and they'd be like, man, I don't see how that could ever be a thing, right? And since then, and you guys can look this up and verify it, but the smart speaker is the fastest growing technology in the history of mankind. Okay. Prior to this, it had been the smartphone. The smart speakers are growing faster than smartphones grew, and this kind of blows people's minds. You kind of have to wrap your mind around it if you've never thought about it. But it's really augmented reality. Yeah. The speaker sits in the corner. It puts this layer of audio over the real world that's internet connected, and you interact with it by talking. A lot of people, they looked at augmented reality and they're like, oh, you're going to wear these glasses and they'll be like, dancing chess pieces from Star Wars that you put, whatever it is. But in reality, the first really widely deployed augmented reality technology is for audio, not for visual. And it's these smart speakers that really bring the internet and inhabit your home with it and just kind of lay over everything so you can instantly access all your information. That's why they're so popular. And given that they're so popular and they're growing so fast, it's really, really important that unlike the mobile market where we basically gave the entire market to two companies, that there is an open alternative for people and for companies who want to do stuff in this market and don't want to be, worship at the altar of the Silicon Valley giants.
That's something I noticed too. You mentioned that you're even encouraging of other companies to take this and utilize it in their platforms or whatever. That sounds odd in this day and age to hear a company making something that's so beneficial to people and saying, here, you guys do something with it and profit off it or do something with it. Like, is that just other companies we see typically would say, no, give me, that's all mine. Is that, again, it sounds like some of that's by design.
Yeah, that's how you win. You win by being open. If the idea is to soak up market share, right? A lot of companies, when they soak up market share, they'll subsidize a product or they'll price it really cheap because they want to soak up the whole market. Well, you don't get any cheaper than free. And so the idea is to give all these companies the ability to do this because voice will be 50% of search by 2022. So 1 out of every 2 searches on the internet will be through voice. Currently, search is a $150 billion enterprise. So if we as an open company can build a technology that's used for a sizable percentage of that, there's a big, huge win for us. And unlike some of the other entrepreneurs that you see out there, I think Bill Gates is a classic example where him and Paul Allen were partners, only he wanted to be more of a partner than the other guy and just could not give it up and had to be the majority, right? I'm just not wired that way. I want to win and I want the people around me to win. And I love scenarios where everyone in the deal wins. Life is not a zero-sum game.
Is the rapidly growing technology the biggest challenge for the company? Because I would imagine, what you're doing in December could easily change by July just because of how quick everything is changing in this space. Is that your biggest challenge, you would say?
Certainly keeping up is a challenge, relative to the amount of resources that we have. One of the things that we did is we started a company in Kansas City, and Kansas City is a fantastic community, and the Midwest is a great place to start a business. But when it comes to access to capital, the Midwest is really far behind the coasts. So actually, I live in Palo Alto full time, hustling money while the team is here in Kansas City doing the work. So scaling has been a challenge, and then it's a much, much harder problem than your typical startup solving. Like when you look at startups, they're like, hey, we built an app to do, hey, we built some little specialty device that does this. In our case, we're building a complete natural language stack end to end. Amazon took 5 years, 3 acquisitions, $150 million, and had 5,000 people working on this technology. That's the bar, right? And so, pushing forward towards that is a real challenge. Now we do cheat though. We have our initial developer was the first hire at Siri. He was the second engineer assigned to Echo. We have this really broad open source community, so people contribute software all day long, and we pay nothing for it. We have some advantages that the other guys don't have that come from being open.
With that, how open are we talking about? Has there already been a situation, or do you think you could encounter a situation where you see somebody doing something with it and you're like, I don't know, I don't feel right about this?
So one of the things, we have a skills repository, and anybody can build a skill, and those skills can be as cute as, a Hello Kitty skill and as vile and evil as you can imagine, right? And we haven't had any significant problems there yet, but there have been some things where, off-color, skills that tell off-color pickup lines that some people might find offensive. And for us, being open is important, and people are going to use this technology in evil ways, the same with any technology. For us, we don't have to endorse it and we don't have to support it. And so we manage our skills repository based on basically me. I make the decision yes or no, and if you don't like it, buy a majority share in the company, and you can make the decision. But over time, the goal is to turn a lot of that over to the community, and allow the community to set their own standards. And so, yes, I can see some challenges there in the future. And we have yet to have a direct competitor set up using our technology to compete straight head-to-head with us, but it will happen. And for me, like, that's when we win. It's like, the other guy is using my tech to compete against me. Like, he is now outclawing market share for our technology. Like, let's go find 8 more guys like that, and let's really go and take our friends, in search and in retail and in computer sales. Let's go take them for a ride.
Well, with the company specifically, could you tell us a little bit about some of the wins that you had early on? Obviously, when you're, an entrepreneur like yourself and you're starting up a company, it's not all just roses and everything is going great. So obviously there's going to be obstacles, but unlike the obstacles, what were the wins that kept you going?
So we very lucky, right? So one of the things that when you look at entrepreneurs who've been successful, you kind of think that, well, they always knew that they like the guys at Microsoft always knew that they would become the operating system but that's not true, right? They had their own doubts in the beginning too. And, us very much the same. When we got started, we went and did a Kickstarter. We raised we raised exactly $127,520. And, we weren't even going to start the company unless that was successful. So we looked at it and we said, I wonder if anybody wants to buy this smart speaker. For me, it's a slam dunk, but does anybody in the market willing to pay for it? And one of the most important things about being an early stage entrepreneur, or one of the things that entrepreneurs miss, is trying to suss out whether people are actually willing to pay to solve the problem you're solving. And Kickstarter is a great way to do that. You take and in our case, we produced a video. We 3D printed kind of a mock-up. Like, if you look at our original video, like, there, you can't see me, but there's me behind the bed, like, typing in the text for the thing to work, because of course nothing worked. Took it to Kickstarter. We're very, very successful, and hired a couple guys that we could afford to hire, and just kind of proceeded down that path. Techstars contacted us. Initially, I was very skeptical of tech. Like, I was like, hey, that seems like a giant distraction. And we went out and we did our homework and discovered that John Fine, who's now runs Firebrand Capital Firebrand Ventures here in Kansas City, and his team were really, really well qualified to help us to achieve our goal. We went through Techstars, and then from there, it's been tough. I mean, there's been times we got within 4 days of running out of cash once. Like, you lose important employees from time to time. There are always the technology just falls apart on you, and like nobody knows how to fix it. There's all these pieces that occur, but all in all, for us, it's been a real positive story, and we've been really lucky, both with team, to have really dedicated, hardworking people, with the Kansas City community being enormously supportive of us, with investors who believe in us, with customers who, in many cases, like they back our Kickstarter, and then they're like, okay, I'll wait 2 years for you to ship. I mean, that's a lot of faith, right? And so we've been really blessed with a lot of that.
I heard you kind of briefly mention, one of the goals was initially when you set out was interact with something that you maybe wouldn't even be able to tell is necessarily, artificial intelligence. Is there maybe an idea or a concept that you have that in the future that maybe right now you're not quite there just from physical limitations or anything? Like, obviously it sounds like wearables is an easy thing to go into. Is there any things like that maybe you have concepts of down the line that is maybe this is how this will grow even into something even bigger than it is?
Yeah, I mean, we did a stovetop with GE for the blind, so that somebody who's sight impaired can command the burners to turn on and off and set timers and that type of stuff. We did an automobile with Jaguar. We're working with a number of consumer product companies I probably can't talk about to integrate in other consumer products. And then our open source communities built it into aircraft avionics systems. Somebody's built a magic mirror, so you mirror on the wall, you could actually talk to it and ask it questions. I mean, there's all these really great applications that we get by opening it, right? By being, hey, go out and make this happen. The goal for us is that if it has a microprocessor in it, we want it to be able to run the Mycroft stack somehow. And so microwaves, I mean, anything you can think of, and in many cases, with a voice assistant that represents the brand, right? So if you buy a Maytag dishwasher, it might be the same Maytag AI inhabits the dishwasher, the washing machine, the dryer, and whatever other Maytag input. And it might be the Maytag repairman as the personality, and it every time you wake him up, he yawns because he's been sleeping, waiting for the maintenance, or whatever it is. That can be on brand for those companies. And then very importantly for us, for individuals, your voice assistant can represent you. And this is where we get into a concept called user agency. So the idea of user agency is that when you use a piece of technology, that technology should represent you, the user, and not the company that built it. And in this space, we are the only company that's building a technology with a focus on user agency. And that's really important for a variety of reasons. There's a couple real good examples. One is, if I call a rideshare, I get the one that's closest to me with the best safety record, not the one that paid the platform to be the rideshare provider of choice. When I get a call at 11 p.m., I get the call from my mom saying that she wants to wish me a happy birthday, which the voice assistant allowed through my call filter, not a call from a sales rep who paid the platform to be allowed to call through my sales filter. And then there's life and death situations with AI. So, think about this. You're in a self-driving car, okay? When you get in the car and you use the app, you select the little click-through thing, which releases them from all liability, right? The guy crossing the street in front of the car who's about to get hit by the car, he didn't sign a liability waiver. So from the company's perspective, it's better that you, the rider in the car, are dead than the guy in the street. And so in a scenario where the choice is hit the tree and kill the passenger or hit the pedestrian, you in the car, who's being represented by this AI, become the sacrificial lamb because, of course, you've signed the agreement that takes it to arbitration, and you're like, so it's making decisions based on what's in the best interest of the self-driving car company, not you, the user. And so user agency can be a life and death thing, and it's something that's really important to us.
That's really intense. I'm really interested for when people start by the thousands reaching out to us about doing a Tim and Tom voice for this thing. Honestly, what's some of the strangest stuff you've seen come out of this? Is there anything like really unique? You're like, I wouldn't have thought anybody to build it.
Just like anything else, there's people building sex bots. Like, any technology, right? Like,
I assume that's all it was.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, there's people out there using the tech to build sex bots. Like, it is what it is. You just kind of roll with it.
Sure.
Yeah.
When they do, how do you handle that? Because obviously, that is one of the things that is going to be come to mind, but how do you deal with those strange ideas?
We wash and sanitize the email before it comes into the network from those folks. I mean, you ignore the stuff that's not tasteful. I mean, is really what it breaks, and you engage with the things that best represent your brand. For us, that's not sex bots. For us, that's more.
Not yet.
Not yet. Unless the market matures, and yeah. So
one really cool thing about your company is where it's located. So we're here at basically a startup hub. What's that like for the company? I mean, are you guys all interacting? Is this like a little culture within Kansas City? Describe this kind of here.
Very much so. So Kansas City has a really active and strong startup scene, both here in Startup Village. A lot of that is Bobby Birch over at Startland News, the Kauffman Foundation, Adam Arredondo, who's now also with the Casey Startup Foundation, and then established companies that have made big commitments to building a startup ecosystem here. So Sprint ran the Techstars Accelerator for 3 years before they branched out into their own. Cerner's been supportive. Black & Veatch I think is running an accelerator over there, and and we all know each other, and we endeavor not to poach employees from each other too often. If we don't collude, no collusion, but it's considered in bad form to go poach somebody's best engineer. And we all root for each other. Graham Dodge runs Six Weather, which is just at the end of the hall here. He just did a 506 CF crowdfunding round, raised a bunch of money. He's been really super successful. We're cheerleaders for that. And then, when he has a project where voice makes sense, which he does, he comes to us and says, hey, how can we help? And we work together. We conspire against investors, to get everybody funded, and then pass off introductions and work together as a team. I mean, ultimately, not all of us will win, right? Like Toby had a big win over at iVerify. I think that it's pretty safe to say that C2FO is going to if they exit, it will have a successful exit. If not, they're going to be Cerner sized before too long. Some companies will fail, but we can all be cheerleaders and for everybody. And when they fail, you have a wake, which is a party, and then the reality is, if you have the skills it takes to succeed in early stage tech, even just to keep it open for 2 years or 3 years, you are in demand. You will have a job 2 days later at one of these other companies, and away you go, and you just keep at it.
So where can people learn more? If people think they have these skills to start delving into this, where can they go? What do they got to do?
So we have, if they want to come work for us, we have 10 internships available this summer. We got 2 business development internships, 3 design internships, 5 software developers. We're looking for high school kids can apply for those. We're looking for college kids, even people who've been out of college for a little while. Come hang out with us for a couple months, get to know us. Last year of our 10 interns, we hired 5 full-time. So that's a pretty good, including one of the ones from the high school. We talked them out of going to college. And so that's a great opportunity. And then for people who are looking at starting their own thing, there's Casey Startup Weekend. I think they're running it once every 6 months. Kaufman Foundation has tons of resources. Techstars has a monthly get-together. I think on the first Tuesday of every month, they just did it, where you can come talk to Lisa. Folks can apply at the Sprint Accelerator. And then, one of the things in the startup community that in many ways is missing from the developed business community is the concept of mentorship. And so, one of my mentees is a high school kid, right? I have a call with him once every 2 weeks, and we talk for 30 minutes about his aspirations to be an entrepreneur. And there's an old adage: when you want money, ask for advice. When you want advice, ask for money. We ended up bringing him in for one of our internships this summer, predictably. So there are startup CEOs, startup founders around the city. If you reach out to them in many cases and say, "Hey, I want to run a startup. Will you be my mentor? I want to talk to you every 2 weeks for 15 minutes." They'll make room in their schedule. You want to do this, you can do it.
So then regarding Mycroft, if somebody thinks, hey, I want to get my hands on this and build something, what do they got to do?
Go to Mycroft AI. They can back our Indiegogo for our Mark II, which is shipping in December. They could buy a Mark I right now if they're more maker and hacker-ish and want to play with that. And then they can donate their voice through at precise.mycroft.ai. And there's a lot of opportunities to engage from folks who are experts in machine learning, can come and do really hardcore stuff. Folks who can just tell the difference between a sound that says, "Hey, Mycroft," and "Love Microsoft." Yes or no, we have a tool for that, and we've got 14,000 utterances tagged. We still need to tag 86,000 in the next couple of months, so come tag 100 utterances. Help us out.
I like that. All right. So what else? We got any social medias, anything like that for people to follow?
Yeah, we're on Twitter, Facebook, increasingly Telegram, LinkedIn. We have a pretty strong social media presence, and please come engage with us. We'd love to have you out.
All right. We're going to have to build one that makes everybody have to listen to Tim and Tom anytime they do some sort of weird search or something. Maybe we'll figure that out. Right. Yeah. Well, we really appreciate you coming on and giving us your time. Sorry I was running late with traffic.
Oh, I'm excited to have you guys out. Thanks for coming out.
Tim and Tom.
This episode of Tim and Tom is brought to you by Your Business. Tim and Tom's listeners could be hearing about your business right now. They could be hearing your business's address, or your business's website address, or even your business's phone number. But they're not hearing that right now, are they? If you want the listeners of Tim and Tom to know more about your business, contact us at timandtomkc@gmail.com.